Alle 30 Sekunden verkaufen wir hier in Deutschland ein Buch von Strelecky.
Wenn du ein Ziel hast, dann liegt es eigentlich an dir, das zu verfolgen.
Just about the time you think you got it all figured out is when life throws you an unexpected curveball. We are always changing and we are always growing. Listen, like it or don't like it, the time is ticking by, so get on it. Why am I here? It's okay to keep asking that question and to keep finding new answers for yourself at different phases of life. What are the 5 things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your lifetime while you're here on the planet? I mean, it is amazing how when you are willing to allow yourself to discover what these 5 things are, and then put yourself out there just a little bit, that it is so much closer than we thought possible. Who's living your dream life? I don't know, but it might as well be you.
Herzlich willkommen heute Abend hier im Kulturforum, unser Ehrengast Strelecky.
I love it. It's such a beautiful city. Yeah, I see why you live here. Thank you to everyone who has chosen to be here tonight. I know that there are 1,000 things you could be doing tonight, 1,000 places that you could choose to be, and the fact that you have chosen to spend the evening with Anouk and I is something that I do not take lightly. So thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for choosing to spend time with us tonight.
Dann ist er Unternehmensberater geworden und hat mit 31 gemerkt, das ist nicht meins. Hat alles hingeworfen, hat seinen Rucksack geschnappt und hat eine Weltreise gemacht über mehrere Monate. Dann kam er zurück, merkte, irgendetwas brodelt in ihm und hat sich hingesetzt und hat sein allererstes Buch geschrieben in 21 Tagen. Das ist das erste in einem Selbstverlag erschienen, ist dann doch entdeckt worden und inzwischen in 41 Sprachen übersetzt worden. Und es geht immer so ein bisschen darum, wenn du ein Ziel hast, dann liegt es eigentlich an dir, das zu verfolgen. Und wenn du so ein bisschen die richtigen Instrumente hast, dann sollte es auch eigentlich kein Problem sein, dahin zu kommen.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that I was going to write a book. I had no plans to be an author throughout my life. I had just come back from this trip of backpacking around the world, so I was in a wonderful state of acceptance and trusting my intuition. So without knowing what was going to happen with that, I sat down and went through the experience over the 21 days. But for those of you that have read Das Café am Roundabout, what was on the pages at the end of the 21 days is almost word for word what's in that book. This year I turned 50, and for the last couple of years I've been struggling. And it seemed, I would wake up and I would feel this internal struggle, and I would be able to say to myself, this is ridiculous, I really enjoy my life, I get to do things that I never imagined I'd be able to do. There's no reason why I shouldn't get up every day and be super happy. But I wasn't. And I was struggling to figure out why that was. And what I was struggling with was the reality of the fact that I was getting older. And it manifested itself physically. And it was real life things. I would see young people walking down the street holding hands, and I would think about when I was 16 or 17 also, and falling in love for the first time. And then also, so I think it was getting comfort with the fact that I'm never going to be that young again. And that was part of it. And then the other side of that was watching my parents get older and realizing that when my father is quite ill, and realizing that when he passes, that I'm the next guy in line. And I don't know why it was hitting me so hard, but it was really hitting me hard, and I could not find my answers. And I have to say that in going back to the cafe over the course of writing the book, I found the answers that I could find nowhere else. And so the cafe is very magical for me on a deep emotional level for reasons like that. I think the takeaway for me, the lesson that I learned in the process of writing this book, is that just about the time you think you got it all figured out is when life throws you an unexpected curveball. And so one of the great opportunities in our life is learning to embrace this fact that we are always changing and we are always growing. And in the book, we meet a character named Max. And I love Max. because Max is so, like, no nonsense. You know, he just says it like it is. Listen, like it or don't like it, the time is ticking by, so get on it. And I think that's a great lesson because life is always changing. We're always experiencing new opportunities, new challenges. And so I will always carry Max's words with me that, yeah, sorry you don't like it, get in the game. Just about the time you think you got it all figured out, life is changing. And so in the first book, John encounters the question, why am I here? And it really rocks his world, and he's trying to figure that out for him. And then in book 2, we are in a different destination, and he's in a different role. He's really grooving with life. He's kind of in the sweet spot of doing the things he wants to do, and he's able to provide guidance to new visitors to the cafe. And then in Cafe 3, in the third experience for him, yeah, he's back to that question again, like, wait a minute, life has changed a lot, and why am I here? And I think the takeaway there for me, and perhaps if you're connecting with that for everyone on some level, is it's okay to keep asking that question and keep finding new answers for yourself at different phases of life.
Von der Beerdigung seines Patenonkels ist in seinem Auto unterwegs, es ist dunkel, es ist Nacht, es regnet, es stürmt und er ist auf dem Weg zum Flughafen und hat eine Reifenpanne. Und es gibt noch jemanden, der in dieser Nacht unterwegs ist, das ist Hannah. Hannah ist 15, ist mit ihrem Fahrrad unterwegs und hat einen Platten. Und die beiden begegnen sich in dieser Nacht und John bietet ihr an, komm, wir werfen dein Fahrrad ins Auto, ich nehme dich mit. Das machen sie dann auch und dann landen sie natürlich im Café der Fragen. Da sitzen sie, mehr oder weniger, und dann geht etwas kaputt und dann taucht besagter Max auf. So, und jetzt lese ich mal ein Stückchen daraus vor. Er rutschte etwas unter der Spüle hervor und streckte seine Hand aus. Ich brauche einen Schlitzschraubenzieher und eine Klemme. Ich kramte im Werkzeugkasten herum, bis ich die beiden Teile gefunden hatte und reichte sie ihm. Daraufhin wandte er sich wieder dem Rohr zu. Man schafft nicht alles, sagte er, nachdem wir eine Weile geschwiegen hatten. Niemand tut das. Deshalb sollte man sich über die Dinge freuen, zu denen man kommt. Wahrscheinlich haben Sie recht, erwiderte ich. Schweigend arbeitete er eine Weile weiter. Denk an etwas, das du gerne tust, forderte er mich dann auf. Nichts Großartiges, lediglich etwas, das du gerne machst. Ich überlegte. Ich gehe gerne ins Kino. Wie oft schaust du dir einen Kinofilm an? Etwa einmal im Monat, vielleicht etwas seltener. Nun, dann wirst du vielleicht noch 300 Mal in einem Kino sitzen, danach wirst du es nie wieder tun. Was machst du sonst noch gerne? Hakte er nach, bevor ich über seine Antwort nachdenken konnte. Ich zuckte die Achseln. Reisen mit meiner Familie. Okay, und wie häufig machst du das? Mittlerweile 2-mal im Jahr, antwortete ich. Prima. Es sind also noch etwa 60 dieser Reisen in deinem gesamten Leben übrig, stellte er fest. Und eine ganze Reihe weniger mit deiner Tochter, weil sie selbstständig sein wird, ehe du dich's versiehst. Magst du Weihnachten? Fragte er weiter. Ich war noch damit beschäftigt, den Gedanken zu verarbeiten, dass mir nur noch so weniger Reisen mit meiner Familie bleiben. Doch er bohrte bereits nach. Magst du Weihnachten? Ich dachte an meine Tochter, ich dachte an den Baum, an die Geschenke und das Verzieren der Plätzchen. Dir bleiben weniger als 30, unterbrach Max meine Gedanken, und lediglich 4 oder 5 weitere, an denen deine Tochter noch ein Kind ist. Ich dachte darüber nach. Weniger als 30 Weihnachten. Vielleicht bekommst du ein paar zusätzlich, fügte Max hinzu, man weiß das nie genau. Die Zeit, die dir noch bleibt, ist ein Geschenk. Und deshalb bedeutet mir jedes Weihnachten, das ich noch erleben darf, sehr, sehr viel. Er bekommt jetzt ein Stück Isolierband zugeworfen. Max fing es auf und riss ein etwa 30 cm langes Stück davon ab. Es war elastisch und riss leicht ein, wenn er zu fest daran zog. Du weißt, wofür man das bei Klempnerarbeiten verwendet, oder? Man wickelt es zum Abdichten um die Gewinde, damit die Leitung nicht leckt, erwiderte ich. Genau. Er bückte sich und hob ein schweres Rohrstück aus Metall vom Boden auf. Wir haben hier dieses unglaublich strapazierfähige, langlebige Rohr. Er griff sich ein weiteres Rohrstück vom Boden. Und wir haben ein weiteres, unglaublich strapazierfähiges, langlebiges Rohr, das wir mit dem ersten verbinden können. Max schraubte die beiden Elemente zusammen. Und obwohl sie perfekt zusammenpassen und man sie schön fest zusammenschrauben kann, passiert Folgendes, wenn man Wasser durchlaufen lässt. Es leckt immer noch ein bisschen, unterbrach ich ihn. Genau so ist es, bestätigte er. Jetzt schraubte er die beiden Rohrelemente wieder auseinander, sodass das Gewinde sichtbar wurde. Denn egal wie perfekt die beiden Rohrelemente auch zusammenpassen mögen, es gibt immer wieder noch winzige Lücken an der Verbindungsstelle. Dort, wo das eine Rohr die Rille des anderen nicht ganz ausfüllen kann. Also nimmt man dieses scheinbar windige, elastische, unscheinbare Band und fügt es zu der Verbindung hinzu. Und damit wickelte Max das Stück Isolierband, das er abgerissen hat, um das Gewinde des einen Rohrs. Danach schraubte er die beiden Rohrelemente wieder zusammen. Und wenn man das macht und Wasser hindurchlaufen lässt, dann leckt es nicht mehr, sagte ich. Max zuckte die Achseln. Ich habe keine Familie, ich verbringe viel Zeit alleine. Und wenn man einfach so da sitzt und das Treiben auf der Welt beobachtet, sieht man, wie die Menschen sich verhalten. Man hört, was die Leute reden und manchmal auch, wie sie sich gegenseitig anschreien. Eines Tages wurde mir schlagartig etwas klar. Er hielt ein Rohrelement aus Metall in die Höhe. Egal wie stark diese Person ist, nun streckte er ein anderes Rohrstück in die Höhe, oder wie stark diese Person ist, jetzt deutete er mit dem Finger dorthin, wo die Rohre miteinander verbunden wurden, und egal wie perfekt die Verbindung ist, es gibt trotzdem noch Lücken, sagte ich, Bereiche, in denen die Verbindung nicht ausreicht. So, das war eine klitzekleine Lesestelle aus dem aktuellen Buch und Sie verstehen, warum ich dringend mit Ihnen über Isolierband sprechen möchte.
The tape is such a great representation of the fact that we allow ourselves to spend even a small amount of time each week on the things that keep us us. And that could be painting for one person, that could be taking your dog through a walk in the woods every morning, that could be an hour of sport, time with your kids. Everybody's answer for what is tape is different. And it's easy to, in the hurried, frantic pace of life, to forget what your tape is. And just the incorporation of just 1 hour a day. I remember a young mother with a couple of small kids. She was such a caring person and such a big heart, and she was always doing stuff for everybody else. And so much so that she was starting to forget that it was okay to do stuff for herself. And when she brought back just 1 hour a day of her passion into her life, she said, when I did that, it made me a better mom, it made me a better spouse, it made me a better me. And I never forgot that.
I decide now, I'd like to play the piano and I start with 1 hour a week. So is this enough, or is this maybe a way to find maybe even a new profession?
It could be. The thing is that in order to get to that second hour per week, we have to start with the first hour. And the first hour is usually the most interesting one in terms of the way that our brains respond to that. Let me give you an example of something that you already do and why it's so powerful to incorporate it into your everyday life. So let's say you love to ride your bike. And every day you ride your bike, or at least every week. So every week you go for a bike ride somewhere. And then all of a sudden I came up to you and said, Anouk, you can't ride your bike for the next 6 weeks. You would not accept that because it's something that you love. And you know how much you love it because you do it every week. But if you hadn't ridden your bike in 2 years, just sitting in the garage, so it's been 2 years already, and I said, Anouk, you can't ride your bike for 6 weeks. You'd be like, okay. Right, because it doesn't have that meaning. You don't have that connection to it. So that's one of the great things when we allow ourselves to reincorporate things that we love into our lives, is it reconnects us with just how much we love it. And then when someone says you can't do it, whether it's everyday life activities or it's boss or whatever, then you fight for it. That's why it's so powerful. The Big Five for life. What are the 5 things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your lifetime while you're here on the planet? So your Big Five for life can be something short-term in nature, it can be something long-term in nature, it can be something that is a one-time event. You may say, I want to go to Africa and see what it's like to see the African Big Five for real. And once it's done, you may say, that was fantastic, that was awesome, and now I'm good, as far as that one goes. And so then at that point, you can add something else into your life. And so, yeah, you may find that your Big Five for life change as you fulfill one. So, and maybe using that example, you say, I want to go to Africa. And maybe also on your list was, and I also want to go to New Zealand. And maybe after you go to Africa, you say, actually, for right now, I'm good with the travel thing, And so I'd like to focus on one of my other big five for life. So it can change over time as you experience one thing. One thing to appreciate as it relates to embarking on your big five for life as soon as possible. I met this couple and they told me this really funny story. It's funny from the outside, it was not funny for them really, but they told it to me anyway. And they said, we had dreamed about when we retire, renting an RV, buying an RV, and taking it around the entire country. So that was the dream. 65 years old, we're gonna buy an RV, we're gonna take it around the country, and we're gonna do that for years. That's the dream. So they work and work and work, save up their money, they hit age 65, they go buy an RV, they are out on the road for 1 week, and they discover that they hate being in an RV. Now, wouldn't it have been awesome to discover that at like age 35? Right? And that's what I love about this concept. It's very simple, the concept of the big five for life. What are the 5 things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your lifetime while you're here on the planet? And then allocating your time and your energy and resources to those 5 things. And so had they, at the age of 35, just rented it for 1 week, imagine the trajectory that would have shifted for them. And so I really encourage you to allow yourself to do what I call sampling. Just, if you think that this is one of your big five for life, then sample it, try it. And maybe you'll find that you're even more excited about it than you ever thought possible. Or in the case of my friends who bought the RV, maybe what you'll discover is that it's actually not your thing, and therefore it's time to change.
Thank you for asking. Thank you for asking. That to me is one of the most genuine questions that we as a human being can ask
Another human being.
There is a wonderful Buddhist expression called namaste.
And this is something that I had heard over the course of my life. There's a little bookstore that I used to go to all the time. It was the very first bookstore ever to carry the first cafe book. And it was run by this little lady. She was in her late 80s, and she was so full of wisdom. You'd walk into the bookstore and she automatically knew what book was for you. And she always used to say when you were walking out, namaste. I never knew what it meant. And so finally I looked up online, and it means, I see you. But I didn't really get what that meant. And, okay, I see you. I see you too. See you later. But then one day it hit me. What namaste really means is I see you. I see the real you. I see not just the form. I don't just see the hair color. I don't see the gender. I see you at your core. And that is such a beautiful concept. And when you ask someone about their big five for life, you're in that same beautiful space where you're saying, you know what? We could talk about the weather, we could talk about sports, we could talk about something else that is viewed as more fluff topic. What I'm really interested in is getting to know you. And I love that. I think if you allow yourself the courage to have those conversations, you'll enter just a wonderful place with people, even complete random strangers. So thank you very much for saying to me that you want to see a little bit of me. And I would love to see you. I would love to hear your personal big five for life. If we, during our Q&A part, have someone who is thinking about something related to your big five for life or struggling with one, ask while we're here, and we'll talk about that. So number 1 on my list is to have a loving relationship with the people that matter to me. And that's something I think about every single day when I wake up in the morning and every single night when I go to bed. Number 2 is to travel the world. Thank you for helping me fulfill one of my big five for life tonight. Number 3 is to master mind over matter. This is a really intriguing one in that there are so many things that we are capable of in this human form. And yet, for the most part, if we're not careful, we just kind of do the same thing every day. But I have run across people who are on that, if you think of a bell curve of the human capability, they're on this side of that. They're on that right edge. Whether it's in the field of athletics, whether it's in the way that they have mastered their thoughts, And I'm fascinated by that. So the ability to master mind over matter. The fourth one is to inspire as many people as possible through the books that I write, through doing events like this. So thank you for helping me fulfill one of my big five for life again. And the last one, which is the one that makes everybody laugh when they hear it, is to write a song that breaks the top 10 of the pop charts. What's really cool about that is I was doing an interview one time with a DJ from a radio station, and she asked me the question, and we got to that one, and she said, well, where's the song? I'll put it on the air tonight. Imagine how many musicians work their entire lives and never get their stuff on the radio. And this lady was willing to put my song on the radio right then and there because she knew it was one of my personal big five for life. And that tells you a lot. That tells you how much people want to help you when they know that it's something that really matters to you. And I love that aspect of it as well.
And I was afraid to ask you this question on stage because I think it's something intimate as well, isn't it?
I guess that's what makes it so special when someone is willing to engage in that conversation. It's the 5 things that you most want to do, see, or experience in your lifetime during your life. And it's the 5 things that if you do see or experience them, that you would evaluate your life as a success by your own definition of success. It's not about anybody else. It's about you saying, this is the life that I really want to live. It is truly one of the greatest gifts possible when you ask someone that question, because what you open up the possibility of is the fact that you could be a who for that person. And that if they're struggling to go from where they're at to the big five for life that they've identified, so from here to here, and they're not sure the way to get there, that you might be the one. One of the big five for life that I had on my list at one point was to make the US table tennis team for the Olympics. And to show you the power of having these discussions, I was at an event that I was speaking at, and we all went out to dinner afterwards, all the speakers. And I said, so I had explained the concept of the big five for life, but nobody had asked me about mine, and so we were sitting around dinner. I said, hey, why don't we exchange what our big five for life are? So it gets to be my turn. I tell what it is, and I talk about the ping pong, and the guy sitting next to me says, I was the runner-up state champion for the state of Michigan in table tennis. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's this person sitting right next to me who can be an incredible resource for me. But if we don't have the discussion, 2 ships passing in the night and we'll never know. And then to top it off, I was so inspired by talking to this guy. So I used one of my favorite techniques that I've learned as it relates to your big five for life. You get on Google, you type in your big five for life, and you type in the city where you live, and you look at what pops up. So it turned out that there was a table tennis club in the city where I live. I had no idea that was the case. I go there and I play a couple of matches, I'm hanging out, and I'm sitting on the sidelines talking to this guy that I just met. The door opens and in walks this guy, and he says, oh, do you know who that is? No, this is the first time I've ever been here. And he says, that's the former Russian Olympic table tennis coach. He trains people here. This is 30 minutes from my house. I mean, it is amazing how when you are willing to allow yourself to discover what these 5 things are, and then put yourself out there just a little bit, that it is so much closer than we thought possible. So one of the things I learned in the process of trying to experience this big five for life reality is that in the table tennis world, that the rackets are not the same. And so I was under the impression that it was purely about the athlete, but it is tremendously about the equipment also. And so when I discovered that, the dream wasn't as interesting to me anymore. But let me tell you one about volleyball. So I go to Austria, and I'm hanging out with my press and media team, and we start chatting, and I tell them about my love of volleyball. And the guy who is in charge of my press and media in Austria goes, oh, well, would you like to meet Oliver Stampf? He's a former Olympian. I'm like, yeah, I'd like to meet him, right? And so he's like, okay, picks up his phone, calls him. He's a close personal friend of this guy. 15 minutes later, Oliver stops by where we happen to be. And next time I'm in Austria, I get to play beach volleyball, which is my game. my sport, against a former Olympian, a world champion, and his partner. And only because they know it matters so much to me. That's what's so cool about this, that when we're willing to put ourselves out there, we realize the rest of the world really loves to help. You know, how many of you have an easier time helping others than accepting help? Awesome. So that was totally me. Totally me. And let me tell you something that changed my life completely, and hopefully this will be a big aha shift for you. Why do you like helping people?
It makes them happy.
It does, it makes them happy, but why do you like helping people? It makes you happy. Yeah, it makes you happy to make them happy. It makes you feel good. When you help people, it makes you feel good. That's why you do it. So when we don't allow other people to help us, what are we denying? Yeah, we're being selfish. Isn't that weird when you think of it like that? When I had that thought, it just rocked my world. Because I do not think of myself as a selfish person. Quite the contrary, I do my best to share and to give and try and contribute as much as I can. And so when I had this aha moment, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm denying people the opportunity to be happy when I don't let them help me. So listen, as it relates to you and your big five for life, people want to help you. Let them help you. So when someone comes to me and says, John, I'm thinking about backpacking around the world. Can I get 5 minutes of your time? My answer is no. Because we're going to spend at least 2 hours talking to each other because this is the greatest thing ever. You know, because I can't wait to tell them. I can't wait to sit down and they literally have to at some point shut me up because I'm going to tell you all about the cool places to go. And I'm going to tell you the way it's going to change your life. And I'm going to tell you how to deal when you don't know what food to order. And I'm going to tell you about great adventures you can have on a scooter in Vietnam. And this is the case whether you are thinking about being an entrepreneur and opening a bakery and you're going to talk to someone who loves baking, or whether it is you want to learn to paraglide and you're talking to someone who loves paragliding. And if you're truly asking about your big five for life and you're finding your who's, by and large, most people are going to be incredibly excited to talk to you in some capacity and help you. In my own life, I can give you a very specific example of where allowing a piece of code to be inserted into my wiring at a very young age set me on a particular course that it took me decades to correct. And so I was backpacking around the world. This is part of the trip that I did right before I wrote the first cafe book. And I was on a train in China, and at 10 o'clock at night, the lights go out, there's nothing to do, you just lay there in your bunk, and clickety-clack, clickety-clack. I'm laying on this bunk, and I have all of these thoughts coming to my head, and it's all moments in my life that were points of failure. And I remember asking myself, why are these the thoughts that are coming to me? Like, why these memories? And all of a sudden, my mind brought back a very specific moment in my life. And it was like I was watching it on the cinema screen. I mean, I was right there watching it all take place. And I was about 5 or 6 years old. And my dad had told me to go down into the basement and to get the drill. And so I went down into the basement and I looked everywhere for the drill and I could not find it. And he had told me that it was on the workbench, and the workbench and the rest of the basement, for that matter, was a disaster. There was like stuff everywhere. And so, you know, you're only 5 or 6 years old, you're only like that tall, and I'm trying to climb up on top of the workbench. There's stuff stacked everywhere. I'm trying to not destroy things, and I cannot find this drill. And I know that if I go upstairs without the drill, I know what's gonna happen, all right? He's gonna yell, he's gonna slam the doors. My dad is a very loving guy, but he shows his love in a different sort of way, you know? And so I knew if I went upstairs without this drill that it was gonna be bad. And so I'm on the train and I'm watching this scene from my life take place right in front of me. And I see this little boy that is me cowering at the base of the steps. He's afraid to go up. He knows he can't stay in the basement forever, and he's crying. And at some point, he realizes, I cannot stay here any longer. I must go upstairs and tell him I can't find it. He goes upstairs, says, I can't find it, and exactly what he knew was going to happen happens, right? Boom, 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 boom. Dad goes downstairs, slams the door, goes into the basement, goes to the workbench, throwing stuff around to find the drill. But he can't find the drill either, because the drill isn't in the basement. The drill is in the garage, which he discovers later. Now later that day, and I'm watching all of this take place, and later that day, the father says to the little boy, which is me, he says, let's go out for ice cream. In my dad's world, that meant, I'm sorry. But when you're 5 or 6 years old, that does not translate. And I realized in watching this scene from my life take place that from that day on, I had lived in a gap where I had a fear of failure and I had a fear of success, both at the same time. I would not do things that I could not be good at. I would not play new board games that I didn't know how to play. I would not take on challenges in school that I didn't think I could do well. I had a tremendous fear of failure. But weirdly enough, I also had a fear of success. And so I would do things up to the point where I was going to push from really good to great. Because when you're pushing from really good to great, you have to fail. You have to try something different. Really good is not the same as great. So you have to try something different. You have to tweak your approach. And from the outside world's perspective, no one would have ever known what was going on inside my head. They'd have said, well, you're a good student and you're a good athlete. Yeah, but I wasn't a great athlete. I wasn't a great student. So I'm on this train, I see this whole experience from my life replaying in front of me. And in that instant when I realized where that fear of success and fear of failure came from, all my fears disappeared, just like that. It was one of the most profound experiences I have ever had in my life, and it taught me so much about how we can have a piece of code sitting inside of here that we don't even remember when it was inserted or when we allowed it to be something that we believed in. And if we're willing to look at our behavioral patterns, we can identify where these things come from and then launch ourselves in a whole new positive trajectory. Yeah, so the experience you're talking to is something that happened to me during the travels around the world, where I woke up and had this realization that I could die today, and yeah, exactly what you said, that I'd be okay with that. Because I finally had allowed myself to do the things that I really wanted to do, to see the things I wanted to see, to have the experiences I wanted to experience. And not that I wanted to die that day, but I finally felt that sense of, like, I was on my track and had really done experienced the life that I wanted to live. I can't say that I've ever lost touch with that. I really do my very best every day to be in sync with the things that matter to me. And now it's different because I'm a father, and so I apply that to my parenting. When my daughter was 2 years old, I realized, wow, she's grown up so fast, and I wanted to try and spend as many quality moments as possible with her, and so I started a tradition called Adventure Day. And Adventure Day was twice a week. I would pack up the stroller, the backpack, the diapers, the snack bag, and off we would go. And we would go to zoos and parks and everything you can imagine within a 2-hour drive of my house. And she is 12 now, and we still do Adventure Days together. And I don't regret a single day. You know, I wouldn't trade a single Adventure Day, even the days that don't turn out as adventurous as we wish. I wouldn't trade a single one of those days for a speaking event anywhere in the world. As much as I love spending time with you, and I hope that's apparent, because I really do love spending time with you. And I think that's a great thing to allow ourselves to incorporate in our life, this idea that what would it take for me to get to that point? Hopefully you're there already, but if not, what would it take to allow me to get to that point? It's a little bit like in the Big Five for Life book where I talk about Museum Day. And allowing ourselves to look at our personal museum with a very objective viewpoint and say, am I happy with what's there? Or do I really want to add a few wings associated with whatever? Yeah, and then making that your reality. Sometimes the universe or God or however you believe this whole experience works actually has something in store that might be slightly different for you than what you're thinking. And sometimes there's just a natural time progression to things that have to happen in order for you to create the things that you want to create in the way that you are destined to create them. Every single person in this room has genius within you. You have gifts, you have talents, you have something that is uniquely special to you. And my great wish is that you allow yourself to enter that state of flow where that genius blossoms in the way that you dream of it blossoming and in ways even beyond you dreaming that it could blossom. So I think sometimes in life you have to just be open to the possibility that there is this something bigger at play and let it unfold in front of you.
Diese Frage, warum bin ich hier, für sich beantwortet?
So first of all, what I've discovered over the many, many years in which people have been asking that question, and I have had the privilege to help them go through the process, is that you already know, and the trick is to remove enough layers of people who have told you you can't do this, you have to do this, you should do this, that the information that's already in your unconscious mind can move forward and that you can find the certainty and the awareness that you're looking for. So that's great news, you already know. The trick is, what's the process to move that? There's lots of different answers to that question. I'll give you some very specific tips. For me, it was I went and backpacked around the world for a year, had the chance to do the things that I'd always dreamed of doing, and in that space, it just opened up a world of awareness for me. So if travel is something that calls you, I have found this technique of taking a year off and backpacking the world to be very effective. And if that's part of your path, I can't encourage you more than make that your reality. If you're not in a position where you feel that is what's calling you, let me give you some very easy, specific things that you can try, and then do me a favor. I'll be signing books. Come up to me and ask me specifically, because sometimes when someone is literally right in front of me, I get some intuitive ideas specifically for them. But let me give you some general stuff as it possibly help everybody. A great question to ask is, who's living your dream life? This is really intriguing. If you come up with a list of 3 people who are living your dream life, and you list the activities or the attributes that makes it your dream life, you can look for patterns in that answer across those 3 people. And what I love to say is, who's living your dream life? I don't know, but it might as well be you. These people are demonstrating that it's possible. Why not you? This is another, you can use those same questions in regards to your work life. So our work life, 70% of our awake life, Monday through Friday, is spent at a job, getting to the job, or thinking about the job. And so if you're able to align your personal purpose and your personal big 5 for life with the job, then you're actually getting paid to live your big 5 for life. That is the sweet spot of reality. And so asking yourself a slight twist on that question, which is, who has my dream job? And what did they do to enable themselves to get that dream job? And now you've got a path to follow. Now it's not so nebulous. And these are 2 great starting points. I'll give you one more. I find with our technological devices, it's very hard to be disconnected and therefore have my own private thoughts. Boredom is actually one of the greatest things ever. Boredom is what inspired us as children to find something that wasn't boring to go do. Our devices can keep us in a very slightly beyond boredom state. And therefore, we never sink to the level that we're actually asking ourselves, so what would make this not boring? What would get me out of dissatisfied to actually be satisfied? And so the last tip I'll give you is to allow yourself the freedom to disconnect from your technology for an hour a day and immerse yourself into a quiet nature environment. Walk in the woods, a bike ride. I love being by the ocean, that's what does it for me. If you do that and you just sort of think good thoughts and think big thoughts and ask yourself that question, why am I here? As you're walking along the ocean or in that nature environment and you record your ideas, think you're going to come up with a wealth of insights.
Can we do a quite fast Strelecky to go, please?
Sure. I had this bad habit of I would be driving, I would stop at a stoplight, my brain would start to drift off into La La Land, and inevitably in the La La Land that it drifted to, it was drifting off to some moment in my life that didn't go well. Like a conversation that I wish I had been better at, or a time that I wish I had been more proactive or more courageous or whatever. And inevitably when my mind would drift there, I would find myself trying to perfect the conversation. I would be improving my part of the dialogue or my part of the experience, trying to make it better. And finally one day I realized that this was unbelievably stupid. This was a colossal waste of time. Because A, I was never going to go back in time and have that conversation. I could perfect it absolutely phenomenally, but it didn't matter because I was never going to get a chance to go back and have the conversation again. The only way I would get to have the conversation is if I invented a time machine, and if I invented a time machine, I wasn't going to use it to go back to that moment. So I asked myself a question, which is, what would be a better use of my life than this pattern? Because we were talking about patterns before. And I thought to myself, what if I was to actually create a phrase that was saying something that I wanted my life to be like now? And I would say it as if it was actually true. And I call this a mantra. And an example could be if you said, I want to be in a loving relationship, then your mantra would be, I am in a loving and spectacular relationship. And so now you pull up to the stoplight, and instead of thinking about this conversation from 17 years ago that didn't go good, or a date from 17 years ago that didn't go good, you're saying, I'm in a loving and amazing relationship. Now, when I first started to try this, I would literally be like, I'm in a loving and amazing relationship. I'm in a loving and, oh, look, there's something, oh, remember that time 17 years ago? Oh my God, my brain was such in that pattern of heading off into this wallow land. But over time, I caught it faster and faster and faster to the point where now, literally the minute I pull up to the stoplight, my brain defaults to my mantra. And I have 5 of these things. And so I will repeat the first one 5 times and the second one 5 times. Well, this was so amazingly effective at bringing into my life the things that I wanted in my life that I applied it twice more. It's the last thing I think about before I go to bed. So I repeat it 5 times, and it literally puts me beautifully to sleep. And now for the next 8 hours of my life every night, my brain is actually working to make these things my reality, which is awesome. And then very first thing in the morning when I wake up, before I take my head off the pillow, I repeat my mantra 5 times for each one of those. It is the most spectacular thing I have learned in the last 2 years about bringing into your life the things that you want.
There's actually something at play, right? It's not just that you're born, you die, and that's it. But there's actually something at play. Doesn't it make sense that whatever power that is more likely to want to help you have an amazing life than a crummy one? I mean, like, oh my gosh, like that's a life-changing thought, right? And so do you think that in the universe's ability to create everything that we can see, it has the capacity to help you in your life enjoy it? I mean, compared to some of the other stuff that's out there, that seems like an absolute no-brainer, right? So then it's like, oh, so how do I start tapping that power? And that's where the game gets really interesting. I just want to say how grateful I am for all the folks who are getting these books, because somebody, which is this person, was kind enough to start sharing it with others. This is Anna, who's the sister of the person taking this video, and that goes to show you that if you do good by one person, good things happen to you. So thank you so much, Anna, for making a difference in the lives of so many others. Take care.